Well, welcome to a Trim Tek delivery to a project that we're working on today. And I just thought I'd throw a little bit of the delivery in there because we are going to be installing this whole package in the next day. So today actually we'll start the installation, and here we are moving some materials into the structure. This is actually a duplex. So we got two sides. There's quite a few doors in each one of these units, and there's a lot of window sills and quite a bit of baseboard. Baseboard is placed in the front in the garage, and that's pretty much the only place it's going to be cut in, really. They'll do a bit of cutting to cut those window sills in, but basically this is the first start of the process. And you don't have to watch this whole video if you want to just learn how to install a Trim Tek door, you know. There's just a bit different than a regular hanging of a door. We don't use nails. We're not nailing in through the jambs and the stuff. Now notice I'm mentioning here in this video that all of these doors have been measured and marked. Every single thing has a number on it, so that who's ever unloading the truck, be it helpers or trim guys that are in there, or the truck driver himself, everything's marked. And those window sills are cut to length, and they're painted on their edges, so they look really custom. Unlike a lot of times you cut them to size, you sand them, and then the painter has to deal with it on site. It's quite a bit different with the Trim Tek system, which I'm sure you're going to appreciate. Everything has been also measured prior, obviously. Everything is measured in the, one of our guys comes there, measures a whole house, figures everything out in detail of what's going to be needed. And even if it's a full wrap window, we measure that too, and we have them come in as one piece. I'll probably jump around here a bit and show you some of the other projects we do. I know I have some video in here of full wrap windows. Notice that our window sills also have that back cut on it. And that back cut, obviously, if you're a seasoned trim carpenter, you like to do that because it gives you a nice tight fit against the window. And let's see here. Here is a little shot of a guy doing the measuring to put the window in, the windowsill. And I just thought I would include some of this, even though most guys that are going to watch this video are going to be seasoned guys that do a lot of install. And if they're not, this will also help the guys that are just new on it. Except it's not going to show you how to cut those in entirely. That's going to be something that you can figure out. But right now, the main thing I want to show you is just the fact that we don't use nails on these things. And he's just dry fitting it here. And obviously it's a little bit of a pain having somebody videoing you when you're doing this. But what he does now is he just loads this sill up with about this much of this grab tight material. And he puts it down, he dry fits it, and then if he has to level it off at all, he levels it off with dollops of the glue, okay? So right now he'll do this, he'll check his reveal and make sure the reveal is the same all the way along, and here he notices that he's a little low on the left side. So he in turn takes that up and he'll add a nice dollop on that back side corner, a nice 1-inch tall dollop. And then he'll proceed to do the same thing and make sure that everything's angled correctly with his little square. And once that sets in place, that will be rock solid by tomorrow, once that glue's dry. And so really not a lot of need for any glue. Any nail, sorry. I'm watching this video ahead while I'm talking, so I have to narrate accordingly. And right here, he's got a couple of little nails he's throwing in there to, I think he's sucking in the sheetrock or giving it somewhere for the glue to hit. I'm not sure what he did that for. But long story short, you got about 1.5 inch overhang on each. Now he's got that glued. He got glue on the back of that, and then he'll hide a nail underneath that. You've seen that. Now this particular video is on another project, and I wanted to show you, like I mentioned, we also do full wrap windows. When we walk inside here, you're going to see these guys preparing these big openings. You're also going to see a bunch of windows leaned up everywhere that are going to be later installed. Let's see if we can find some, but anyway, but look at how great that would be to be able to show up on the job, and there's some windows in the background there on the your far right, and there's one there, that raked one, that's going to go up in that opening. They come like that. They're all pre-painted, ready to go, and all you do is just clean the opening out a little bit and get rid of any residue, sheetrock stuff and everything. And then you'll put glue behind the trim, a nice bead of glue behind the trim. Not too much. You don't want to put too much because you don't want to hold it off the wall. And then you'll just slide that sucker in there, and you'll just tap it with your fist, the back, you know, just lightly tap that so it gets a nice good seal against the wall. And in here we got, in this particular video, this section, we've got some doors going in as well. And this is a craftsman style trim package. It's got that little overhang on the top one. It's got a windowsill and apron. It's a nice little detail. Some guys go with the picture frame. I personally think it's much higher end looking if you go with craftsman style. And in fact, it doesn't cost much more for the craftsman style, if at all more. It might even be the same. But I like it a lot better because it just looks better. That's it, you know, having a windowsill with an apron. So we got these guys getting that ready. I probably could have shortened this, but remember, I'm doing this so people understand that Trim Tek can supply you railing packages, the top grab rails on the walls. Everything's pre-cut, pre-painted, and there's that top window there. And they do these wall cap systems in preparation for the pickets and all that. You got these skirt boards going up here. And like I mentioned before, this whole package this house is, I think it's 1,800 square feet. And the whole thing got done in one day. There was quite a few guys on board to make that happen. But literally, I think there were 6 guys total. And they just kicked ass and got it done pronto. And everything was perfect when I left. I went back actually the next day after they caulked in there. They caulked behind the window trim, and it literally looks like it was painted in place. So I am going to include some of that footage, not in this one because they hadn't caulked it yet, but they'll also do the caulking around all the doors as well. They'll also caulk that joint, that slip joint that goes on the slip jamb there. The 2-piece jamb for the doors has a little space where the two slide together. There's not much of a space, but we caulk that as well. And then we also caulk, as mentioned, everything gets caulked to the wall. And now, one of the most important parts of this video is that we're going to show you how to install one of these split jamb units, these door systems, okay? So I'm going to talk kind of fast here. Most likely you got these little brackets that it comes with, okay? So this is how it holds the jambs together for shipping, okay? We got this bracket here. And this bracket gets taken off and the split jamb part gets removed and set aside for the time being. So at any moment we're going to see that happen. And also, like I mentioned, every door is marked so it knows where it's going, and there's really no room for mistakes as far as putting a door in the wrong spot. With Trim Tek, we go into the project and mark everything. You can see all the marks on the jambs and on the openings. See, now here we got Carlos taking off that metal bracket I was mentioning. He's taken off the front part first. I probably could fast forward this, but you can fast forward any part of this that you want to just move forward. I may condense a very quick version, or I may even go really fast on this, but I think that the installation part is maybe 20 minutes long. So, and once you know how to install these doors, it's going to take you about 10 minutes per door. And we kind of went a little slow here because we wanted Carlos to go through and talk and explain what's going on. I am actually doing the explanation at this point, but it's very basic. It's one of these things, you know, it's a step pattern, and once you get it down, it becomes a breeze. And like I said, 10 minutes, you'll get these doors in. The difference with these doors and the standard installation is you got no nails going into those jambs at all. And you got no nails going into the trim. Remember, the trim is installed at the factory. Here we go right here. You can see the trim. He's going to knock off that bottom one yet. And everything's installed at the factory and painted at the factory. So you have a perfect finish on here. It's like basically furniture quality. That's how good it is. 99% of the time it's almost perfect, and or is perfect. So he sets aside, in this case, he's putting his split jamb because the hinge is going to be on the outside. Now you're going to hang the outside, you're going to actually hang the side that has the door on it first, which is pretty obvious. I shouldn't really say that, but just for the hell of it. Now, he's going to go ahead and knock those bottom brackets that were put on there for bringing them over for shipping purposes. And he'll take that, lean that door there, and he's probably going to remove that center plunger. Like all doors come, all trim guys experience that. And I know this is a bit different system for most trim guys. That's usually the biggest hang up, is they're not used to doing these steps. But remember, you're going to love it once you get on board, because you're going to realize you don't have to do any drywall beading, you know, like you normally will when you go to put trim on. Like he'll knock down a few spots that he sees that are a little high or kicking out, but it's not excessive. And compared to doing a trim package, a lot of times if you're a really clean trim guy, you do really nice work, you end up having to cut the sheetrock out in order to get that trim to sit flush and tight on the jamb. But in our case, that won't happen, because you'll take that door and you will, first of all, you're going to caulk the back. I don't know what happened here. This video went over to that back there, but I'm going to go right back to Carlos gluing the back there. Here we go. See, he puts a bead of caulking on the back of that trim, as you can see, little spots of caulking all the way along. Now, in this case, this is a mitered trim package, okay? So we got miters on there. So you're going to put a little bit of caulking on the top there as well. When it's a craftsman style, you put the top leg after you're done the whole thing. You put that on last and you glue it on. So here we go. So you see that glue itself will hold that door somewhat into place. You're going to give it a couple little hits to get it close. Now he's just eyeballing that up and looking at his reveal. Granted, he's done hundreds and thousands of these doors, really, because he'd been Trim Tek for 15 years or so. So he uses minimal effort. Like he uses that little round plunger to support his door. And then he takes a long screw that's supplied with the trim package, a matching color screw, and he'll run his 2.5-inch screw in through that hinge up there. Now, it's very important, he mentions that it's very important to pre-drill that hole that's going to be drilled in where the hinge is. Because if you try to just throw that screw in there, you don't have as much adjustment as you would if you were to pre-drill it. You want to have some good stability. Right now he doesn't really even have it set. So what he's going to do, he's going to take a half pack of these shims. And notice that what he's done is he's taken a stack of shims that are wrapped in the plastic and he cuts it in half as a half pack. So it's a lot better than trying to put long shims in here, and you get twice as many shims as well out of that. So he's going to get that nice and where he wants it. and then he's going to tighten that screw down there, or he'll put that 2.5 inch screw right in there. And then now he's got that door secured in place so he can do the rest of the shimming. So now what he'll do is he'll shut that door and he'll have a look at his reveals, and he'll either loosen that screw or kick the bottom in order to get his top reveal. In this case, he wants to also make the reveal similar on a small reveal there. He's only got about 6 inch gap to that wall, so he wants to make sure that looks good there too. And then he'll put the screw. It looks like he's going to tighten it down. He likes it there. And the glue's kind of holding everything a little bit here at the same time too. So now he's going to add a couple shims in behind here to make that happen. He normally puts the fat end of one shim in first, and then he'll take and do a reverse and add the fat side on the second shim, which will be running against the door side. And there's going to be some more videos of him putting those shims in, but if you can follow my wording, it's self-explanatory basically, but you'll have an option to see more video later. If you've hung a lot of doors, you're going to understand this quite easily. It's basically using the screws to hold your reveal. The main screws in the hinge is what's holding you in place, whereas a lot of times you would be nailing right now through those jambs. And in this case, because everything's pre-finished, you don't want to have to fill nail holes. That's a no-no. And that's what Trim Tek is made for, basically. Yeah, it's just something you're going to love. So, he's just moving the jamb around here and there and getting everything reveals right. It's self-explanatory. He's going to add a couple shims. He wants to add a shim in that center as well. And he's going along adding his shims in there, getting his reveal just like you would with any other door. And while that glue's drying, you got a little bit of time to maneuver that around a little bit. It's still pretty sticky. And he'll get that in place, and then he'll shim that to location. Here he's putting in another one. We jumped over and added this one in as well, so you can see it from the other side, how that happens. It's really quite a simple system, and you're also screwing in those metal brackets get screwed in there as well, okay? So that's something that, see right there, that gets screwed in there. And basically you're using the same screw that came with it, where it was holding the two split jambs together. You just have those in your pouch and you use those. Now here he goes. He used that screw like I mentioned, and to screw that bracket in, and now he's going to shim the back of that to kind of where he wants it. And as mentioned, he's done a ton of these, so he has his own system for speed, and he's got his pre-sinking bit here, very important, as he mentions all the time, that if you pre-drill that, you're going to have a much better outcome, because if you don't, the screw is going to affect the door in and out. And it's going to sometimes make it too tight, and you're going to be fighting it. So very important to pre-drill that, have a couple screwdrivers on board. And obviously everybody knows that. I mean, it's different than doing a standard trim pack. So you're mostly using a nail gun, and you have one drill for maybe putting screws in the hinges. But in this case, you're using two different bits in the drill, so you want to have two. Anyway, here's showing you some of this here. We got what's going on in here. Let's see here. We went back in here. And okay, so nesting all these screws in. You're setting your reveals, you're putting your final screw in there to hold that. And as you can see, with that screw in there and it's sucking tight against those shims, that door's not going anywhere. Plus it's also now sitting on the glue on the other side on all the trim. It's holding everything in place. And then when it gets its final caulking around the whole perimeter of that trim, you get another bit of security is there as well. So that door never really moves. They're solid. That stuff is hard to get out. I mean, it's not impossible because sometimes on a rental, you want to go in and change a whole door out and the trim. It doesn't take long at all. A seasoned guy would take him 10 minutes to get it out, 10 minutes to put it in. So, and even if he's not, if they watch this video and they're any kind of aware carpenter, they can do it quite easily. It's a lot better to be able to change a door out on a rental, let's say, or whatever reason you want to change it out. It's a lot easier than doing it the traditional way where you would have to take all the trim off, chuck everything out, start over, put it all in. You'd have to install the trim, and then you'd have to have a painter come in and paint it all. And it's a long process, you know, where with this process, you can literally know the size of the door you want, have it ordered, and then walk in there, and in about a half an hour, by the time you take it, the old one out, put the new one in, all the trim's on already, you got a half an hour, you're out the door with a brand new door in place and caulked in place, everything's done. So you really can't beat the Trim Tek system in many ways. You know, I'm just jumping over that way to the rental, but while we're talking here and he's going over some of the details. So I'm going to mention that you can just, I mean, if I was watching this video for myself to learn, I would want a lot of visualization, see kind of what I want to look at that before I get my hands into it, so I'm really mentally prepared. But anytime you feel that you are understanding this, you don't have to watch this whole video. I'll probably mention that I'm kind of a repetitive person, but I might say things over again twice, but also I'm doing this editing, so sometimes I might forget I said something. But basically, once you get your feet wet with this video, you can go there and install a door and then come back and refer to this section. Probably, I think it's about 20 minutes into this full video is where that starts. The actual door installation part. And yeah, more shims in here. And let's see, we got securing the strike side of the door now, like you would do normally. And he's got that nice and tight in there now, it looks like. Pushing that leg in. Now he's adjusting that bottom leg like you would normally do. Okay. It's moving a bit on him because it's not secured yet, but he'll get a screw in that other bracket, or he might put a hidden nail in there to hold it in place. Now notice, if he does put a nail in, it's going to be in a spot that you can't see, and or that will get caulked afterwards anyway. Like he'll put a nail right on this where the baseboard goes, okay? So you can see, actually he wasn't videoing that right tight there, but you can watch him put that door, that one nail right on the inside, right where the baseboard covers. Now that holds him in place at the moment there. And he got his reveal looking just right. He's going to secure that bottom hinge where he knows he's got everything working. Like he can see every reveal. And he doesn't screw with the door very much once he's got that reveal right. He just gets into securing it to where it was, where he has it set. That's his big thing. And now he goes and does that pre-drilling again. And He'll get that one so it's stationary. And as mentioned, I think you heard in the first time I said it, if you have, say for instance, oil rub bronze hinges or brushed nickel or black, they will come with the package. So you don't have to go looking for colored screws, you know. A lot of guys, I mean, almost on every project I go to, 90% of them have a different colored screw in there when the guys are screwing their doors hinges, you know. But not with Trim Tek. It's nice that they supply like a black screw or, you know. See, now once he's got this done, the next step is going to be putting in that other trim. I think he jumps onto that pretty quick here, the exterior trim here. First, he's going to shim that a bit more to make sure it's stable. And, you know, if you guys are installers, he's going to pull that open a bit. But if you guys are installers, you know what it's like when somebody's watching you. Things are a lot different. It's a way different scenario when somebody's watching you and you're trying to explain it to somebody. You might not as, you know, in tune with what you're doing. But when you're not being watched, I mean, Carlos would just knock this out of the park like in no time. And he is endeavoring to show each step a little bit and explain it, kind of like I'm doing for him, because the sound's not perfect and he's talking about a lot of stuff. So basically this is all you really need to know. And of course you're gonna really get a lowdown on this project, on this process when you start installing them. That's obviously when the real experience is gonna be obtained, is by doing it, you know. See, now he will do the odd nail sometimes where the trim meets the jamb. If he wants to hold it in there and it's not staying, he'll throw a nail right in there. But then he also nails like 4 or 5 nails right in the strike plate area that gets covered with the little metal part. The little metal strike will cover those nails, but that holds him just where he wants to be. So don't be shy, put those nails in those areas. And he can tell that it's not quite where he wants to be, so he's gonna pry that just a little bit away, get a little bit better reveal, a little slap there, and then he will call it a day on that one, probably. You know, and you gotta also remember that really good trim guys can put a door in a standard door in less than a minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes. You know, they're popping those suckers in really fast. But then what's the next step is they gotta prepare for trim. And a lot of times, let's say you're using pre-finished trim. Well, then you really gotta clean up that sheetrock, so because sometimes you got a big gap in there and you don't want to put an 1/8 inch of caulking because it's going to crack eventually. It might look good, okay, for the first year, but later on it's not going to look good later on down the road. And you're going to want to go back in there, and people are going to want to paint, and like somebody's living in a rental, for instance, and you want to, you know, after 3 or 4 years they move out, and you go in there and you see all that stuff, you know. And you're going to want to go in there and have to paint. Whereas with Trim Tek, you'll never have to do that because everything's going to remain good. You're not going to have no caulking in where that trim meets the jamb. I know I mentioned that before, but and obviously that's because, like I said, it's applied at the factory. The jamb and the trim are put together with a very special clamping system, and it's instant glue that glues that sucker on there really firmly, and you can't rip it off. It's on there for good. Now let's see, it looks like he's getting ready to put the finishing side on. Okay, so first of all, he's going to go and put some caulking. This is another important step. He'll squeeze, he's going to cut those shims off, but he's going to squeeze a bunch of caulking in that gap. Dollops of it, which you'll see in a second here. He's getting those spaces so they can't move on him. He's got it straight, but he wants to make sure it stays there. And also he's helping for when he puts the other trim in, the other trim that's going to go over top of that is going to want to have those shims in like he's putting in right now, because that's what the other trim rides up against, okay? So you have to have that, because that split jamb slides right in behind the other part of the jamb that is attached to this side that he's working on. And see, now he squeezes a little caulking in there so that when he slides that split jamb in there, it's going to have a place that it rests on. And as he slides it in and then he slaps it with the side of his hand, it's going to grab onto that caulking. Now, right now he's putting the caulking on that split jamb side. And very simple. And he'll put a little on top here. And, you know, that's going to hold your top in place. This grab tight stuff's pretty great. It really grabs quickly and holds on. And it doesn't, like once you put it on and you slap it in place, it doesn't want to just fall off like a different, you know, some other glues would do. But we found this to be the best glue over the years and the most cost effective. So here he goes. He's going to start pounding this into place with the palm of his hand. He'll get it in there nice and tight. Actually, on this one, he finds out that, I remember now, he finds out that his door is, in this particular case, the right side had to be cut down on the split jamb side. And I think it had something to do with the floor was a little raised there. And this doesn't happen very often, but when it does, you just walk it out and you just get on that saw and you cut the one leg off. Obviously, Carlos has done this a lot, so he knows how much to take off just by eye. It looked like it had to come off about maybe 1/8 of an inch, because he doesn't want to leave a big gap in there. Anyway, we'll bump right over this. You don't have to pay attention to this, but you will run into it the odd time, so it's kind of good that this part is in the video. And as you can see what he does there. So sometimes it makes it easy if you just have a guy with you that happens to be out there. He'll grab the back side of that trim. You can cut off. See, his one guy's holding that back side up. And carrying on, to bring that back in, he'll cut the other side off. It looks like both sides need about 1/8 off of it. And it's kind of important to cut it like that too, because you got the front of the blade cutting the front of the face of everything, so makes for less potential blowouts on the saw, you know. So we got him going back in there, and you know, he's pretty finessing kind of guy. Like, he's walking in there with that glue already on there, and you know, first couple tries at this, you know, sometimes he might have actually did a dry fit if he wasn't being filmed. He might have dry fitted it real quick, but anyway, he's going to use the glue that he's got on there. So he slams that in now, gets it all nice and tight, boom. Now, in order to hold that in place, depending on where you're working, what you're doing, he sometimes will just take a stick and slide it on the side. I think on this one, I watched the video before, and he takes a piece of wood and sticks it in there to hold that gap in there tight. And my apologies for having to watch this so long here, but just bear with me. I'll try to explain what's going on. And he'll grab one of those shipping sticks that he used. And if you're in the hallway and you have room, you don't have to use a shipping stick. You can just take a nail and nail it in behind the trim on the corner on the side, like he's probably going to do here. He's going to take one face nail there. He'll touch it up with caulking. You won't see it. The face nail is actually not in the face. It's actually in between the jamb there and the trim. But he's got a pretty good eye. You can see that he knows that this is going to be about either 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch away. So he's just popping that in there just to hold it in place while it's drying. He'll give that trim a little hit, and it will be staying there. So basically, he can walk away from this door now, and it's ready for caulking the next day. I mean, in fact, you can caulk. He'll throw a nail at the very bottom here if it's holding up, and they'll just lightly touch. It's a very odd nail. Once in a blue moon, they'll have a nail in there. And just to mention that Trim Tek also takes into account if there's no room for a reveal, okay? They'll also take that into account, and they will have that one piece of trim will become as a separate piece so that you can rip it on the table saw to the actual size you need it. And here's some more samples of this piece of trim, this attachment mechanism, which is a bracket. Now, you're also going to know that when they do that at the factory, sometimes they put that piece of metal bracket, it's actually in the middle of the jamb, and it needs to be tight to the hinge side. So he'll quickly take that piece of metal off and move it close to the trim on the jamb side, on the side where the hinges are. I hope that makes sense. He'll do that once in a while because the guys in the factory are just putting that bracket on there, and sometimes they don't keep it tight to the hinge side. They have it more in the middle, but you can't have that because otherwise that piece of bracket will hang out and won't allow you to put your final trim on the other side. So in this case, let's see if he moves this one. It looks like it's pretty tight. You can see it's pretty tight to the hinge side, so he may not remove it. Sometimes he does, and he might show you in the future here one that he takes off entirely and moves forward, or backwards rather. So he's talking about that right now. See how that's got to be tight there. Now he's measuring, and he says, yeah, it's going to clear, so the trim won't be in place. He's going to measure that depth, so that's 4 9/16. So as long as that trim, that piece of bracketing, looks like it's going to be in the way. So he took that one screw out, he'll slide it back tighter to the jamb face of the trim. See what he's doing? He's got it tighter now. And that's the first thing you do. When you grab a door, your first thing you do is you're going to take those screws out, you're going to remove that face trim side of the jamb, the split jamb. You're going to remove that from your system like he's doing right here. Okay, now he ends up having 4 9/16 in this case. And now you can set that aside, and you're ready to install the door itself. So some of this, like I said, is a little bit repetitive, but if you want to have a second look, go ahead. You can keep watching this, or you can go give it a shot. And if you have any difficulty, I always find very obvious once you're doing a bit of installation, you then get questions that are, more suitable to ask because you'll have some experience. So that's kind of where we're at right now. He's getting ready to do this again. I'm going to narrate it, even though you probably don't need it narrated, but it's kind of self-explanatory by looking at this. He's also taking his time. He's showing the guy that's filming. They weren't sure if I was going to narrate over it or I was going to keep their voice in there, but I decided that it's better that you have a good, clear narration, because during that installation, they were all over the place. They were talking, and I didn't find it. Notice he's also mentioning, too, to not put too much glue on here. For one thing, you're wasting it, and you really only need a very slight prow of glue all along that. And he does it in spurts, okay? It's not a continuous line. It's another sample, what's going on. And also you'll notice, actually I'll probably drop a picture of another installation in here right in a minute. I'm going to show you that we do the same thing on pre-finished, like stain grade packages. And I'll tell you, people love the stain grade package because you don't get any nails, right? You don't have any face nails on the stain grade either, so it looks beautiful. And you know how bad stain grade is. You can't get rid of those nail holes. I don't care if you use color putty. I just went on a project yesterday that I looked at. It was at a job that we installed about 10 years ago, and it's a pre-finished wood trim package. And we didn't use this Trim Tek system, and I'm telling you, I was kind of embarrassed looking at it. It looked that bad. Because the nails, you could see them more now than ever, because what happens is that color putty has a little bit of, you know, some alcohol in it, and it dries out, it changes color, and it actually dries out around the nail hole as well. So you look like it looks bad, and you can really see those nail holes. And you know, that's a lot of reasons why a lot of builders don't like to do pre-finished trim packages, I mean stain grade, because really it's hard to cover. I mean, I used to do a ton of them, but you know, they don't look good after a while. Like at first they might be okay if you buff out those nails that you fill with the color putty and you mix the putty together to get the right color. There's another sample of those shim packs that he cuts in half, like I was mentioning. So but jumping around here a bit, he's gonna pop that hinge in there. He's taken that side, the thick side goes in first, okay, as mentioned earlier. Then he'll take another shim and he'll run it backwards with the pointed side going in. Now he's going to go and he's going to pre-drill that. He's got his hinge in there. He's going to go ahead and he's going to pre-drill that with that bit and get that nice and purty. Now he'll set those two shims in place. He'll probably put that screw in first, get some tension on it, slide in that. He's got a screw ready to go. He'll put that in there, tighten it up on that shim, and now technically his door's secured and it won't move around now. That's your most important spot, is that top hinge. In order to get started on an install, that's what you do first. Looks like he's got his hose in the way or something. Got that nice reveal going around there. Going to double check on this particular instance. He wants to have that looking level. And generally he'll do that because the walls are usually pretty close to level. And you can work that so that you have the same reveal on the left all the way down, you know. Now I didn't mention something else, is that when you get a door, you want to check the floor sometimes on an installation because the floor may be out of level. So if you put a floor level from side to side of that opening, and you notice there's an 1/8 or 1/4 inch difference, let's say your hinge side needs to be shorter. So you'll take and cut that 1/4 inch off of that side. You'll cut that down, which doesn't happen too often, but it's kind of hard if you got that big of a difference in your floor height, and trim guys know this already. They have to do the same thing in any other installation. But in this case, the floor is level. It's a brand new installation, brand new house, and you know, in some places we're going in and we're taking a whole trim pack out and putting a new trim pack in. And literally, it's quite magical because we can do it in one day. We basically go in there in the morning. Well, obviously we are there about a month before, where we go in and measure everything, and we go back to the factory. We order all the doors. We get everything in, we fabricate everything, have it all ready, and it comes to the project. The day it's coming to the project, we know it's going to come on, let's say it's going to come on a Tuesday. We'll go in there on a Monday, and we'll remove all the old trim, doors, everything, window wraps, whatever it may be. Everything's out, it's all accommodated for and all planned for. And then on Tuesday morning, the trim guys will be there, help unload the truck and place everything and install the whole house in one day. And I have another video that shows that, which you're probably going to watch that too. It's the one that said no nail trim pack installation. You can watch that video as well. And on an example, that was an 1,800 square foot house. That whole house got installed in one day. And the customer was blown away because he was not put out almost at all. Literally, to take out all the trim, it only took about 3 hours. So he had no doors on his house for one day that evening. And then looks like once in a while, if the wall's bent, once in a blue moon they'll add a face nail. Not too often. And literally the guy's without trim for one day, and then the next day he gets this whole trim pack put in, all the door handles and everything installed, and the guy's up and running. He has a brand new trim pack in basically a day and a half, which is quite amazing really compared to what normally happens on a trim pack. And we all know that is all the trim gets taken off, and then the carpenters come in there for like about a week or two, and they're hanging the doors, they're banging around, they're in your house, they're moving furniture around, you got dust kind of coming in and out of the house. It's a real mess, really. But in our case, it can be done in a day, so it's a real blessing. And feel free to move up here and move along anytime you're ready. Yeah, if you're anything like I am, I learned from doing it, you know, but it gives you a bit of reference points. And I do get repetitive here. I've forwarded and went through a bunch of the videos that are coming out. I might end up taking some of it out because it gets too repetitive. But I'm sure these installation videos could be more descriptive in a shorter period of time, but on this one you can see that I was looking up here a little bit. He actually, because he's in the closet here, I think this one, he ends up putting the caulking on the wall on this one. Anyway, he's getting this in. Yeah, he's got a little bit of he's move that over a bit, slide a bit of a shim in there, and keep that secure, nice and tight. See that friction fit. Now just remember that shim, and I mentioned before, when he puts that final trim, that split jam on the other side, that trim is actually what is gonna, that other jam is going to be sliding against those shims, okay? So it's important to have shims all the way around the whole project. And once again, I'm going to mention this again, it's very important to cut those packs of shims in half, because you'll be fighting it, you'll have to use this, you know, that fine tool too much. You'll have to cut it off too often. So you want to put those shims in half size, okay? Okay, so let's see here. Okay, so we got a little bit of reveal action happening here, kind of orchestrating over top of that. I actually was going to erase part of this video to move forward, but I noticed something that he does on here in this particular case. Quite shortly here in a second, he's going to actually use his nail gun to nail in on the face of the edge of the trim on the outside. And in some cases he'll be doing that because he may have a bit of a bowed wall or a bit of a bow. Well, the jambs are usually pretty straight, but let's just see what it looks like when he's doing this. But you never want a face nail, unless it's at the very bottom. Once in a while you might end up doing that, but he's going to throw a nail in right on this backside edge here. I'll show you. Right back here. He's going to hide a nail right in there, and that's going to keep him right where he wants to go. He's going to hold that reveal where he wants it to be. He can see it with his own eyes where it's supposed to be. He wants that right on the money. He'll hold that in place. And then he'll throw nails right in that strike plate, like I mentioned before. Now that's going to hold everything in place there while that glue is drying, okay? And that's about that. Pretty much done on that now. Ready to do the inside trim, ready to move on. Now he's going to jump right into the closet here, and he is going to, actually in this case, because he has more availability to putting the caulking on, he just does a dry fit like I mentioned prior. This is what he normally does, is he dry fits it. Make sure it's good, everything's going to work, the legs aren't too long or something. And he is ready to go with the caulking. He puts it on the wall. You can kind of see just how friction fit that is to begin with. So now he'll come in here, I'll throw the caulking on the wall instead of on the trim itself this time. Can do it either way, but on a mitered one, he puts that across the top, and on this case, he's going to put a little bit of caulking on there. You know, and you're dealing with a guy that's done so many of these, he knows how much to put on, not too much. You don't want to put too much of that on. You don't have to. And by the time this glue dries, by tomorrow, or later on in the day basically, it's in there. And then this is another very important part, which I mentioned. You can see how he makes a dollop of that grab tight right there on both sides. It's going to hold everything in place, okay? So that when he slides that in there, it's going to be against that, and then he's going to push it tight to the other jamb. And when he pushes it tight, it spreads that glue inside the cavity and holds the side in place, and then the glue behind the trim holds it snug on the wall. And by the time that dries up, you're going to be stable and you're good to stay there for good, you know. And that glue right there is actually what's holding everything nice and snug. Also the shims that are in there. So you can see how that jamb, that split jamb, is open right now, and he'll get it and he'll pull it tight and it'll become less of a gap. He doesn't really show it here. Let's see what he's going to do now. Probably going to add a few nail here and there, and this is in a closet, so sometimes he might end up doing a little nail, which is very, yeah, he's got one going on the back side just to hold it. And normally you can just do that by, if you're in an open area, you can take a nail and run it in on the edge of the back side of the edge of the right side of the trim. In this case, he's going to do it right in the face, just because of the fact that it's in the closet. But generally, they will not nail anything on the face because they can always access the side of the trim in most cases. And then when they go through there and they caulk everything, they caulk the split jamb part and they caulk all around the trim. It looks really nice, and then they'll just touch a little bit on those few nail holes, and you'll never see it. So this is another spot. I mean, it really depends on the installer, how much experience you have. A lot of the stuff's very repetitive, and it's very obvious what he's doing here, because a lot of these steps you're doing the same thing in general installs. And actually, I never really, because I used to trim a lot of stuff without the Trim Tek method. We'd always have shims sticking on both sides. You have to go after everything's set, and we got 100 nails in the thing. You probably generally, when I was putting in doors, I would end up having a minimum of at least 4 nails per side on the jamb, depending on how things are working out. And then you go and you cut all your shims off, and then you trim it. So it's a big difference, huge difference. But anyway, most of you guys know what's going on here at this point. You're really quite aware of what we've done here and what we're doing. Pretty self-explanatory. Goes and hides that nail there right where that trim meets the jamb. And remember, that's on the hinge side at this point. And then he's got his strike plate, nails again. And I know I'm looking at this video, it's actually an hour and 25 minutes long. You do not need to watch all of it. In the end of this video, you're going to see a bunch of some projects that we finished. It's going to be actually this project. I'm going to walk through it and show you it when it's all done and caulked. They caulked it the next day while they trimmed the other side off. And this whole project took 2 full days to do. And there was a couple things they needed to get on this particular job, which ended up putting it back another day. They were waiting for the handles. They were on back order, so we had to stretch it out an extra day or so to get the project finished. But other than that, it could have happened all in the 2 full days to do everything, Okay, so now we're going to do the walkthrough. Went back the next day, and you can see everything's done here. Here's a caulking. It's done really once you get the hang of caulking, it's very simple to make it look beautiful. And obviously, all the baseboard gets caulked to the wall to get rid of that shadow line, and just makes it look exactly like a painted package, painted in place. Even though it is a painted package, but it's not painted in place. It's painted in the factory. And we had a customer that was super picky. He has 100 homes he's building, really high-end stuff. And he said, there's no way you can make it look as good as a paint-in-place package. So it literally took him to come to many projects of ours and try to pick it apart, see if he could find any flaws in it. But the good news was that he literally couldn't see anything wrong. And in fact, he said, I got to admit it, the painting is better in your factory than it is in place, because a lot of times there's some tight spots, you got a lot of, the painter's not going to make it 100% every time. Whereas in the factory, when we got those doors hanging on that system and they're in the booth, they're on a little bit of a conveyor belt hanging from a system that goes around like a little track. So those doors are in the same position all the time, which allows the painter to make it perfect and very consistent. Where in here, you can't sometimes get into a closet and paint. You can't. Sometimes you got a wall in the way. Sometimes the lighting's not perfect. You got a shadow line or something, and you're dealing with that. But in our case, everything looks the exact same everywhere. And that includes on the handrail, the grab rails. The grab rails are put together in the shop. The returns on them, so you don't have to cut and try to do that. Yeah, so here we are again. Basically, we don't need to show you all this, but here's the finished package, We put the shelf and pole and everything in there nice. And when we're doing the shelves and the poles, all of those parts come pre-cut. So it's really nice for the guys to install. It's very simple, very fast. Some more details, just kind of showing off how nice it looks. It looks perfect. Looks like it's painted in place. Beautiful. Now here we're going to move on a bit. You know, the only thing that actually has to be cut on site is the baseboard and some wall cap stuff. Because, you know, you're not going to have that perfect in the factory and try to transfer it over there. So, but see, these wall caps here have to be cut, obviously. The miter's on there, that's about the only spot, but you can see they don't look bad at all. And look at the beautiful sheen on that painting. It's done to perfection. Everything's the same, like I mentioned. It all looks exactly like it should. It looks furniture quality. And the more picky a guy is, the more eye he has, the person observing the whole outcome, the pickier they are, the more impressed they are. I'm going to mention something that we do. We put these rubber stops on our doors, right, so it actually hits a rubber bumper. A tiny little rubber bumper about the size of a 1/4 inch little rubber that goes and sticks on there. And so now when the doors go to shut, it's not so noisy, like you hear doors slamming all the time. And people go, man, these are kind of nice. I'm like, yeah, look, you can't really see them. It's on the jamb. So you can, but here we go. Here's a little sample of our windowsill and apron. And look at how nice that looks. It looks beautiful. They got it perfect. And they go in and they caulk along the window side, up against the window part there. All the handles are in place. We got all your stoppers. They put 2 stoppers on, one on the top and the bottom when they can't put a bumper on the wall. So it helps to disperse the tension, 2 locations. And then we got a wall cap here again. We have another windowsill situation. Very common stuff. I mean, everybody knows this. But you know, some guys don't even want to do windowsills because it's too much of a hassle to go in there and set up and paint all those in place. It's so much labor, and you get overspray going on. You get potentially, unless you mask that thing off really good, you're going to have that overspray. And a lot of people, even though the windowsill and apron is very inexpensive to have put in consideration, but it sure is nice to have a sill and apron rather than doing 4 sides of sheetrock on these other smaller, less, you know, high-end stuff. Don't want to knock it down, but the reality is I know why they don't want to do it. But with our system, you don't have any of that in problem. It's very simple to install it. It's not expensive, and you're done, and it lasts a lot longer than a sheetrock one. It looks way nicer, and you know, you're guaranteed the sheetrock ones are going to have dent on the bottom side with people setting stuff on. It's going to get chipped there. That's why I always suggest putting those in. Okay, so here we went back to this other project. I wanted to show it to you with all the windows in. Unfortunately, I didn't get some super close-ups on that big window system, but it's literally perfect. And you can imagine how long that trim system would take to do if you were cutting and putting that in place. That would take me, as a good trim guy, you know, a good day to do that. And that's if everything goes real well. But you know, then you got to get it painted. I mean, it's such a beautiful outcome what's going on here with this trim pack from Trim Tek. And this project was done for a Lexar home, and out in Toledo area. And we got craftsman style, and you can see. And then I'm going to spin around here. They're still working on the railings. I think they had to order 1 rail there or something like that. That's why they didn't go in. But you can see that all this tape that's on here, this is to allow for the glue to dry so that there's no nails in all these parts, okay? You can walk in down the hallway here. I'm going to show you, this particular trim pack is beautiful. The lady of the house that actually designed this or chose all these colors did a really good job on picking the colors. I mean, they are beautiful, and you'll get to see that. Now there's a sample of a trim there with the caulking again on that Craftsman style trim package. Looks really good, eh? Oh, that looks nice. I just really love that because I've seen so much in my life, and whenever I see these trim packs installed, it just makes my day. And I'm telling you, I mean, I've gone into trim packs that were painted in place, and I've not been as impressed either. And look at on this dark trim. She's got, I mean, a dark wall. Look at that, how beautiful that caulking is. It's just perfect. Literally looks, you know, if not better than an installed painted in place. You know, because it's got a perfect trim caulk line. Anyway, as mentioned, we got the railing system. That'll all get caulked, all those joints, and it'll look like it's painted in place. I mean, you cannot tell the difference. All that tape will come off. It got put on late, and it was holding the parts and pieces in place to dry. And the next step, when those guys bring back that other railing, it'll all come out. And here comes another nice color that she chose for this one of the kids' bedrooms, I believe. But I love it when a customer goes all out and puts full wrap windows in, because it makes a night and day difference, you know. But that's usually a custom house. That's somebody that is going to move in there, and they do it now rather than later on upgrading, you know. Here's another rake color that she picked. Not that I'm showing you guys colors here, but it's nice to see how nice that contrast looks and how good that caulking line is, and really just how high-end it looks. Anyway, that's that, people. Thank you for watching. We will be hearing from you, I'm quite sure, and if you have any other questions, just reach out to myself or Trim Tek. I'll leave my numbers and Trim Tek's number there and a couple email addresses, and we can connect with you and measure up your job and talk with you about some of your multiple projects you'll be doing. And thanks again for watching.